Okay, this is just going to be a short little video explaining something called cell structure. In other words, in animals and plants, we have something called a cell. And when you heard this word the other day when we talked about characteristics of living things, we said all living things are made of something called cells. And these are the building blocks of all organisms. Okay? So inside in your body, these millions and millions of cells form something called tissues, and then they form organs and something then called systems. So I'm sure you've all heard of digestive systems. So if we work backwards and we work down to the smallest level, the smallest building block of life, we would find something called a cell. And your job today basically is to look at these animal and plant cells to be able to draw a generic one. So in other words, a general structure here of an animal cell and a plant cell, and to be able to label it and talk about what each part of that animal or plant cell does. Okay, so this is going to go straight into your notes copy. And what you're going to do is you're going to draw out a nice little neat diagram of both an animal and plant cell. Okay, so if you have a black biro, that'll be fine. You don't need to necessarily use a pencil for this. So what you want to do there is you want to draw a rough circle. Okay, so an animal cell doesn't really have a defined shape, but sometimes it resembles circles. Okay, at the center of this circle, you tend to find an unusual kind of dark circle, and that dark circle is what you call a nucleus. Okay, that's the first thing I want to label on this diagram. Okay, we're going to take an arrow out, and we're going to call this the nucleus. The nucleus is interesting because what it does is it's a control center of this cell. Okay, in other words, like the brain of this cell. Without the nucleus, the cell could not exist for most cells. Okay, on the outside, then, this line I drew here is called a cell membrane. And this is just the outer layer here of the cell. And this outer layer basically provides protection. So it what it does here is it you know protects the cell from the cell contents coming out, and it also allows substances in. So, for example, we want to get oxygen into the cell, and we also want to get food into the cell. So, therefore, we have to have something to control what enters or leaves that cell. The next part you're going to enjoy, because what we're going to do is we're going to draw little dots, and these dots are going all over this inside of the circle, and that's to represent the fact that there's lots of things dissolved here inside in this cell. Okay. And once you're happy you've done that, you then want to swap over and you want to draw a line here for this space. So just the space inside the cell. And you want to call this the cytoplasm. Now the cytoplasm is just a liquid. What I want you to picture is water. So cytoplasm is made of about 90% water, and there's some dissolved substances inside there as well. Dissolved substances like, again, for example, sugars and oxygen, okay, that are necessary inside in that cell. Okay, and I'm going to swap over to the plant cell and draw the plant cell. So what we want to do now, again, with our black biro or pencil, is we want to draw a rectangular shape now for a plant. Okay, so this rectangular shape here is representing the part of the plant cell we call a cell wall. Now, if you picture a animal, many animals have what we call a skeleton or a backbone. Okay, and that backbone allows you to stay upright, okay, to stay vertical. A plant doesn't have that. So what a plant uses is its cell wall to make it rigid, and it allows it to grow upward. And what I want you to do is picture the function of bark on a tree and the protection it provides to the tree. That's exactly what the cell wall does. The cell wall provides protection. Now what you're going to do is you're going to draw another line, but this is going all around the inside of this cell wall. And this is actually exactly the same as the animal cell. It's called a cell membrane. So clearly draw your arrow onto this line and call that a cell membrane. Now the cell membrane in the plant cell has exactly the same function as it does in a animal cell. It controls what enters or leaves that cell. Now, at the center of every plant cell, you have something called a nucleus as well. And again, same function. The nucleus, what it does here is you want to draw a circle. The nucleus is the control center here of this cell. Okay, now clearly label that again. In actual fact, when you draw a nucleate or draw the plant cell, what you will find is that all of the cell parts of an animal cell are also found in a all of the parts of an animal cell are all found inside in the plant cell. So with the nucleus. Now, if you have a green biro, then this would be really useful for this part because what you want to draw here is these oval structures that are green, and they're found throughout an animal cell. These oval structures here represent what we call chloroplasts. Now, I'm sure some of you might have heard of chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are what allow plants to photosynthesize, in other words, make their own food. Okay? And chloroplasts contain something called chlorophyll. And chlorophyll, if you've ever gone outside into a garden or a field and you've got green material on your hands, that's chlorophyll. Chlorophyll that has given you that green color. Okay? Now we also have to draw a sort of a loop structure here. And this loop structure is what we call a vacuole. A vacuole is only found here in most plant cells, so a large vacuole. And this large vacuole has a role in storing food and water. So that's its function. It stores food and water. Okay. Now, that's important inside in a plant cell because if you think about it, most animals feed on other things. They don't have to store food, but a plant cell definitely has to store food because it is, if you think about it, it has to photosynthesize. It has to store something called starch in its plant structure. So therefore, you need some sort of structure here to hold the food or water. Okay. I think we have everything there that I want to highlight. We've talked about the nucleus, we talked about the cell membrane, the cytoplasm. In a plant cell, we talked about the nucleus, the cell membrane, the cell wall, the large vacuole, and the chloroplast. And there's two other parts there that we could talk about but when I come back next week, we'll talk about that ourselves in detail. Okay, so that's it for today. That has been the plant cell and animal cell diagrams.